Ladies and gentlemen, let's set the scene. You're binge-watching a new anime. The world is dark, demons are terrifying, and our main hero is just a cinnamon roll too good for this world. Suddenly, a new character appears. Cool color scheme, check. A killer, silent entrance, check. An aura so powerful you can almost feel the frame rate drop. Double check. This, my friends, is our first encounter with Giyu Tomioka, the Water Hashira of the Demon Slayer Corps. And if you just wrote him off as another quiet, brooding badass, you missed the entire point of his character. Born into a world already shadowed by loss, the early life of Giyu Tomioka was a quiet prelude to the immense sorrow that would define him. He and his elder sister, Tsutako, shared a bond that was the sole anchor of his childhood. This fragile stability shattered irrevocably when a demon attacked their home. In a final, desperate act of love, Tsutako shoved Giyu into a closet, sealing him safely inside while she sacrificed herself to the monster outside. Giyu, helpless and terrified, was forced to witness the entire gruesome event through a crack in the door, the image of his sister's selfless death etching itself permanently onto his soul. This traumatic loss planted a deep seed of survivor's guilt, a pervasive belief that he was unworthy of living when someone as good as his sister had to die. Found wandering and catatonic by the former Water Hashira, Sakanji Urokodaki, Giyu was taken to Mount Sagiri. Under Urokodaki's stern but fatherly guidance, Giyu began the arduous path of becoming a demon slayer. He learned the ways of the water-breathing technique, his natural talent allowing him to master all 10 forms. Yet, his motivation was not born of a heroic desire to save the world, but from a deep, personal need to atone. He fought not for a future, but to justify a past he felt he shouldn't have survived. This inner turmoil was reflected in his performance during the final selection. Though he passed, the experience was another scar. He was one of only 2 survivors, a stark reminder of the high mortality rate and the heavy cost of their war. Upon joining the Demon Slayer Corps, Giyu's immense skill quickly propelled him through the ranks, culminating in his appointment as the Water Hashira. However, the title did not bring him peace. He built walls around himself, adopting a cold, aloof, and often harsh exterior. This was not a reflection of arrogance, but a complex defense mechanism. His survivor's guilt festered, leading him to believe he did not truly belong among the Hashira, a feeling later identified as the imposter syndrome. He saw the other Hashira as possessing purer, more righteous motives, while he viewed his own existence as a fluke. This internal conflict manifested in his infamous first encounter with Tanjiro and Nezuko. His cold demeanor and immediate suggestion that Nezuko, a demon, should be killed, stemmed from his rigid, trauma-forged worldview. He believed he was enforcing an unbreakable rule to prevent future tragedy, a direct projection of his own past suffering. Yet, the sight of Tanjiro's fierce, selfless protection of his sister resonated with a buried part of Giyu, reminding him of Tsutako. It was this flicker of recognition that stayed his blade, a moment of uncharacteristic hesitation that would ultimately alter the course of the entire conflict. Giyu's journey is one of slow, painful thawing. His role as a distant, often silent, observer of Tanjiro's growth gradually chips away at his icy shell. He becomes a reluctant mentor, his actions speaking far louder than his words. He is the one who sends Tanjiro to his own master, Urokodaki, setting him on the right path. He later defends Tanjiro and Nezuko before the Hashira and the core leader, Kagaya Ubuyashiki, staking his own position and life on his belief in their unique bond. This was Giyu's first true step beyond his self-imposed isolation, choosing to trust in a possibility he had long since denied himself. The battles against the upper moons, particularly his joint fight with Tanjiro against the progenitor of demons, Muzan Kibutsuji himself, force him to confront his past completely. He is no longer fighting just to atone for a death, but to protect the living. He fights alongside the very boy whose compassion challenged his core beliefs, and in doing so, he finally begins to forgive himself. The legacy of Tsutako's sacrifice transforms from a chain of guilt into a source of strength, a reminder of what he is fighting to preserve for others. His story concludes not with the eradication of his quiet nature, but with the integration of his pain into a newfound purpose, finally finding a place where he belongs, not as an imposter, but as a pillar of strength forged in the fires of his own profound struggle. Giyu Tomioka's ascension to the rank of Water Hashira placed him at the pinnacle of the Demon Slayer Corps, yet it was a position he inhabited with a profound and quiet dissonance. While his mastery of water breathing was undeniable, allowing him to execute all 10 forms with flawless precision, his internal landscape was one of deep-seated conflict. This turmoil manifested externally as a cold, detached, and often harsh demeanor, which many of his fellow Hashira misinterpreted as arrogance or aloofness. In reality, this was merely the fortress he had built around a heart burdened by survivor's guilt and a pervasive sense of being an imposter. He believed that his place among the Hashira was a mistake, that he was fundamentally unworthy to stand beside individuals he perceived as true heroes with pure, righteous motivations. This belief system was the direct result of the trauma he endured as a boy, witnessing his sister's sacrifice, and it colored every interaction and decision he made. His now iconic first meeting with Tanjiro and Nezuko was the ultimate expression of this fractured worldview. When he confronted the boy protecting his demon-turned sister, Giyu's immediate reaction was to invoke the corpse's most rigid doctrine: all demons must be eliminated. His words were cold, his expression unyielding. He saw in Tanjiro's desperate struggle a painful echo of his own past, but from the outside looking in. To Giyu, Nezuko was not a sister, but a monster. Tanjiro's love was not noble, but a dangerous delusion that would inevitably lead to more death. He believed he was acting to prevent a tragedy identical to his own, enforcing a brutal truth to save Tanjiro from a future of even greater pain. He was, in essence, trying to replay his own trauma with himself in the role of the harsh reality that separates a brother from his sister, believing it to be a necessary cruelty. However, Tanjiro's unwavering spirit and the sheer, selfless love he displayed created a crack in Giyu's armored psyche. The sight of a boy willing to die for a family member, even one transformed into a demon, resonated with the memory of his own sister's identical sacrifice. It was this flicker of recognition, this challenge to his core beliefs, that caused his sword to hesitate. He did not spare them out of sudden compassion, but out of a moment of profound cognitive dissonance. The rule he held as absolute was suddenly faced with an exception he could not logically reconcile. This single moment of hesitation set Giyu on a new, unspoken path. He became their silent guardian, sending Tanjiro to his own master for training and, most significantly, staking his own life and reputation to vouch for them before the Hashira and the Master of the Core. This was not an easy decision, it was an act of immense personal risk that defied the very doctrines he had previously embodied. In defending Tanjiro and Nezuko, he was not just defending them, but tentatively embracing the possibility that his own rigid worldview might be wrong, and that a path existed where love could, against all odds, triumph over the curse of a demon. It was the first, crucial step in his long journey from a soldier bound by guilt to a protector guided by a hard-won belief in hope. The final, pivotal stage of Giyu Tomioka's journey is one of profound internal transformation, where the icy fortress he built around his heart was slowly dismantled not by a single blow, but by the persistent warmth of human connection and the brutal necessities of war. His role evolved from a solitary enforcer of rules to a pivotal pillar in the Demon Slayer Corps, a change catalyzed by his ongoing, often silent, observation of Tanjiro Kamado. Tanjiro's unyielding compassion, his relentless spirit, and his pure-hearted motive to save his sister served as a living, breathing challenge to Giyu's entire philosophy. Where Giyu saw a world defined by loss and necessary sacrifice, Tanjiro demonstrated a path of unwavering hope and protection. This dichotomy forced Giyu to re-examine the very foundations of his own existence, beginning the slow and painful process of healing his deep-seated survivor's guilt. This evolution was not passive. Giyu's commitment became undeniable when he stood before the assembled Hashira and their leader, Kagaya Ubuyashiki, to defend Tanjiro and Nezuko. In this moment, he consciously broke from the rigid doctrine that had once defined him, staking his own position, his honor, and even his life on the belief that the bond between the Kamado siblings was different. This was the first time he publicly aligned himself with a cause rooted in faith rather than cold, hard fact. It was an act that isolated him from his peers but signified his first true step toward integrating his past with a new, more hopeful future. He was no longer just fighting to atone for his sister's death, but to protect a living example of the love she had embodied. The climax of his internal struggle occurred during the final, cataclysmic battle against Muzan Kibutsuji. Fighting side by side with Tanjiro was not merely a tactical alliance, it was a symbolic convergence of their shared experiences. As they faced the progenitor of all demons, Giyu was also facing the source of all his pain. In the heat of that desperate struggle, the last vestiges of his imposter syndrome began to crumble. He was not a fraud occupying a Hashira's place, he was an essential, powerful warrior, whose unique skills and resolve were critical to the survival of his comrades and the fate of the world. The memory of Tsutako transformed in that battle from a chain of guilt binding him to the past into a source of strength empowering him in the present. He was finally fighting not just for the dead, but for the living standing beside him. The aftermath of Muzan's defeat and Tanjiro's near-tragic transformation into a demon presented Giyu with one final test. As Tanjiro, now a demon, advanced on his own sister, it was Giyu who intervened, holding the boy back with tears streaming down his face. This raw, emotional display was the complete shattering of his cold facade. He was not a detached Hashira performing a duty, he was a grieving comrade desperately trying to save a friend from a fate worse than death. In this ultimate moment, he fully embraced the compassion he had long suppressed. In the new era of peace that followed, Giyu's quiet nature remained, but it was no longer a barrier. Having finally reconciled his past and accepted his worth, he found a genuine place to belong. He continued to watch over his friends, his silence now filled with a hard-won peace, his legacy forever intertwined with the boy who taught the Water Hashira how to truly live again. The legacy of Giyu Tomioka is not one of thunderous proclamations or a personality that commands a room, but rather a quiet, enduring testament to the power of silent strength and the profound impact of leading through action. His aloof and often harsh exterior, frequently mistaken for arrogance, was in truth the scar tissue of profound trauma. This very nature, however, makes his journey of internal thawing all the more significant. He did not transform into a different person, instead, he learned to integrate his pain, allowing his core integrity and unwavering sense of duty to be guided by a newfound, hard-won empathy. His story is a powerful narrative about the slow, difficult work of healing from survivor's guilt and learning to see one's own worth. His influence on the world of Demon Slayer is immeasurable, and it hinges entirely on a series of decisive actions born from a place of challenged belief. His initial hesitation to kill Nezuko was the first crack in the Demon Slayer Corp's rigid dogma. By sending Tanjiro to Urokodaki, he set the boy on the path to becoming the warrior who would change everything. Most importantly, his defiant stand before the Hashira, where he staked his life on his belief in Tanjiro and Nezuko, was a pivotal moment that altered the course of history. It was Giyu's credibility as the stoic, rule-abiding Water Hashira that gave his defense such weight, ultimately securing the chance that would lead to Muzan's defeat. In this, he became the crucial bridge between the old, in compromising ways and a new, more hopeful possibility. Furthermore, his role as a mentor, however reluctant, provided a unique and crucial form of support for Tanjiro. He was not a warm or verbose teacher, but his interventions were always timely and profound. He represented a different kind of strength, one that was calm, reserved, and rooted in immense personal pain. He taught through example, demonstrating that strength and compassion are not mutually exclusive. His final, tear-filled struggle to hold back the demonized Tanjiro was the ultimate expression of this, proving that his resolve was now fortified by love for his comrade, not just a cold sense of duty. In the end, Giyu Tomioka's complete story is one of a man who learned to build connections without dismantling his true self. He found a place to belong not by becoming more like others, but by finally accepting that his own unique journey, with all its pain and solitude, had forged him into the precise pillar of strength the world needed. His legacy endures in the peace he helped secure, a peace that finally allowed the quiet Water Hashira to find a measure of his own.